We talked a little bit about making presentations in the Module 2 video on mediums in the screen capture section. So there you learn the basics about slideshows and how you can use them to convey your ideas to your audience in some format other than the standard written blog post. Now in this video we're going to talk about repurposing your slide deck so that you can create a video out of it. So here's a set of slides that I created for Module 3 of Always Be Shipping, and I'm going to go through and show you how I would repurpose these slides to create a video out of them. And so the first thing that you can do, whether you're in PowerPoint or whether you're in Keynote, if you do not have a screen recording type of software like Screenflow or Camtasia, you can go to Play and then record Slideshow. What this will do is it'll make it big on my screen, and it's going to actually start recording this for me. When I click next, it'll go to the next slide, and next it'll go to the next slide, and so on and so forth until I'm done going through all of the slides that I wanted to go through. Now when I've got the recording, which I have now, I can go to Share and Export, and then I can choose to export it into a Quicktime Movie on my desktop or wherever that might be. There it goes. And I can export that movie onto my desktop. Now it's going to take a little bit of time for Keynote to go through that process, and the process is pretty similar in Camtasia. I'm going to cancel it so that we don't have to watch the whole thing. But you can also record your slideshow using Screenflow or Camtasia Studio directly, as opposed to going through the record function within Keynote or within PowerPoint. And that is the way that I usually do it, because a lot of times I'll have in a slideshow a bunch of slides just like this, but then I may have a moment where I want to do some live demonstration using my web browser. And when you're using just one screen recording software like Camtasia Studio or Screenflow, you can just amend those additional recordings onto the file that you've already created of the slideshow itself, as opposed to having to wait for it to export from Keynote like we were doing for a minute until I canceled it, and then putting it into Screenflow or Camtasia to edit it. And then you're going to have to wait for it to export all over again when you finally go to render that video. So for that reason, I usually do choose to go direct with recording in Screenflow or recording in Camtasia Studio. But if you're just doing a straight up slide presentation and you want to record a voice narration of it so that people can watch on screen as they hear your voice, just like you're watching right now, you absolutely can just use the built-in record feature inside of Keynote or inside of PowerPoint. Now once you've got your slideshow into a video format, what do you do with it? YouTube is the obvious answer. You've got a video, so you're going to put it on YouTube, and one that you should absolutely take advantage of. So you just upload your video to your site's YouTube account and you're good to go. It's there. You can, of course, also upload your video to your own hosting and embed it into your site. So you would use a service like EasyS3 to upload your video file and then to create that HTML5 compliant player that you can embed on your site so people can watch the video on your site. If you've got a series of slideshows and you're going to be repurposing them into video, you could even do a video podcast. Video podcasts are exactly like audio podcasts, except that they have video. They're also listed in the iTunes store, all the same stuff, but they're a video instead of an audio. So to get your video podcast into iTunes, if you do decide to go that route, consider using the PodPress WordPress plugin. It doesn't just work for straight up audio podcasts, it also works for video podcasts, and it'll get all of the data that iTunes wants your podcast to have into iTunes in the proper way that they want it all set up. Once your video podcast is set up with the PodPress WordPress plugin, you just have to submit it to Apple. And to do that, you'll open iTunes and go to the iTunes store. And once you're there, you'll click on Podcasts, which is in the very top navigation bar. When you're in the podcast section on the right, you'll see a box that looks like this one, and click the Submit a Podcast link to start the submission process. The page you'll get to then will look something like this. You'll get the podcast feed URL that they're asking for here from your PodPress installation. And then just follow the prompts from iTunes, go through the process. You do need to have iTunes installed on your computer, Windows or Mac is fine, and an Apple ID to submit a podcast to iTunes. Your video podcast is then going to go through Apple's quality control checking, and that can take a while. You might hear back from them in a day, and it could be a month. It's really dependent on how many others are ahead of you in the line. Assuming that you're producing quality matter like we're teaching here and always be shipping, I'm sure that you will be approved by their quality control department. So I wouldn't worry about that as long as you're producing great content like we talk about. Now, I've given you a few ways that you could post and distribute your content. How do you know which of those is best for you and which ones you should actually do? Let's narrow it down a little bit for you. If you've got a video, slide deck to video, always, always, always take the time to do a YouTube upload. YouTube has such a massive audience. It's the second largest search engine in the world behind only Google. That means that there's more searches done per day on YouTube than there are on Yahoo or on Bing. So Google gets the most searches per day, people entering things in the box, and YouTube is number 2. That's a massive statistic. So if you've got content, if you have videos, it's really silly not to put them on YouTube, unless, of course, they're a members-only type of thing like you're watching here. But if you have content that you're using to draw people into your site that's free, oh my gosh, put it on YouTube. If your videos are or are going to be part of a series, then it's absolutely worthwhile to make a video podcast of them. And then, of course, to make sure that your site visitors get the opportunity to check out your videos, make sure that you embed them on your site too. Don't just upload them to YouTube, but embed them on your site as well. And whether you do that with the PodPress plugin or whether you do that by embedding a YouTube upload is entirely up to you, and it depends on what your goals are. Are you doing a video podcast or not? That kind of thing. But get it on your site too, right? Because you want your regular site visitors to see this stuff that you're creating also. Whatever's the best fit for you, remember that the reason that we're repurposing slides into video is to get as much traction out of the content as possible. So don't be shy about sharing your stuff and getting it out there. And always, always, always give people a URL or a watermark of some sort on the video so that they can find you if they like what they saw on another site, like in iTunes or in YouTube. You want them to be able to find you after and get more of your fantastic content.